Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to our Career Development Alumni Interview Series. My name is Annie Suferdini, Director of Career Development to the Welch College of Business and Technology here at Sacred Heart. And today I will be spending a few minutes to sit down with Tim Kelly, another valued alum who has so graciously offered to take some time to speak with us today. Tim, thank you again. It's great to see you, and looking forward to you kind of running through, what it is that you do and some advice that you have for our current students. So just to get started, would love to get just a brief introduction from you.
Sure. Thank you for having me on for this interview. So for everyone watching, my name is Tim Kelly, and I am a pretty recent graduate of Sacred Heart. To give a little bit of background on my SHU experience, so I was a freshman at Sacred Heart in 2014. So I was an accounting and finance double major during my time at Sacred Heart. So I graduated in May of 2018, and then I rolled right into the next academic year as a graduate student in the Master's of Science in Accountancy program. And that ended in August of 2019. And during my undergraduate studies, I was fortunate enough to obtain a job offer going into my senior year with PwC. So I kind of went through some of the more traditional kind of Big Four recruiting. And then I started full-time shortly after I finished the MSA program. In September 2019 was when I started with PwC.
Great. And can you talk just a little bit about, what is it that you do? What's your current role?
Yeah, sure. So I know that's pretty popular question. Especially I remember when I was telling my friends, I'll be in audit assurance. They're like, what is that? And I think as a college kid, that's like kind of, you're kind of thinking to yourself like, yeah, what is that? I did sign the contract and I'm not 100% sure of what I'll exactly be doing. So the assurance practice is at my firm, PwC. It's pretty spread out. How it's organized is based on industry. So there's a ton of different industries. The industry that I'm in particularly is the alternative investments assurance practice. Mm-hmm. So essentially what we do is we audit hedge funds, private equity funds, real estate funds, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And so kind of going back to, what audit or assurance is a company has a financial reporting system, right? So at a certain given period of time, they'll report, their balance sheet, income statement of cash flows, amongst a few other statements, depending on what industry you're in. And what our job is to do is to kind of give an opinion on those statements and ensure that they're reasonable. And that they're reporting, what they're saying they're reporting, right? Okay. So if a company, let's say, says that they have $1 million in net income, right? It's like, okay, well, what procedures can we as auditors do to ensure that that is the actual number or within a reasonable range, which I'm sure some of the accounting students that have already taken the auditing course have learned about materiality. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like big picture of what we do is ensure that financial statements are accurate. And, particularly within the alternative investments practice, one of the big things that we focus on is the investment side, right? Okay. So when you look at a company, let's say a hedge fund's balance sheet, a majority of their assets are investments. And that can be a variety of different things. That can be some publicly traded securities like Apple and Facebook. And then there also can be some more illiquid kind of privately traded securities that the average everyday person doesn't have access to.
Okay. Well, great, thanks. And what do you think are maybe some of the major factors that kind of led you, in terms of maybe what you've learned at Sacred Heart or what you've did at Sacred Heart that eventually led you to where you are now, do you think?
Yeah, so I think that in terms of my personal experience, so when I was in high school, I kind of knew towards the end that I would be potentially interested in accounting. I definitely, was interested. I think a lot of kids, they see, some of the like traditional like finance movies, and they think that, like, oh, like that's like what they want to do. And so I think I kind of fell into that path. So when I got to Sacred Heart, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do specifically, and I thought that the accounting and finance double major was really valuable in helping me kind of assess the different career paths that I could pursue.
Excellent.
I know one thing particularly was to give, I guess, a little bit more background. One of my cousins was actually working at EY while I was in early college to late high school, early college. So that was kind of, I guess, the like first glimpse of like a potential career path that I could go down. So I kind of had, an understanding of the Big Four, some of the different services that they provided, audit, tax, etc. So I had a little bit of a basic understanding pretty early on, which I think was an advantage.
Great.
And kind of understanding where I wanted to start off my career, which is another thing, right? It's like you're so young, like you don't need to understand where you want to be 20 years from now. It's really kind of figuring out, okay, where can I see myself outside of school for the first, few years.
That's great advice, and kind of segues into my next question of, would you have done anything differently if you could come back to Sacred Heart now and do it all over again, knowing what you know now? What would you change? Anything?
Yeah, so I think hindsight's 2020, right? And it's obviously, super easy for everybody to say, oh, I would get, 4.0 every single semester, right? But I think really, so I guess kind of, reflecting on my experience at Sacred Heart, I mean, I wouldn't change the fact that I was an accounting and finance major. I think that worked very well for me. And I think that if there is someone that is, let's say, just solely a finance major, I think that, you should definitely consider pairing that up with something, whether that's accounting, like I did, right? So I'm also going down the CPA route for those watching. So that's a whole other animal in itself. And then there's also like computer science, right? That's something that's really growing and prevalent. And I know that when I was at Sacred Heart, there wasn't a financial analytics concentration. So that's something that I would have taken advantage of if it was given during my academic years. And there's also the econ double major, which I know is pretty popular. I think that, it's really valuable. You're giving a lot of time, going through the 4 or 5 years at Sacred Heart or any institution. So getting the most out of it, I think, is pretty important. So getting the double major, the financial analytics concentration, I think, is huge. I think really almost regardless of what you're interested in, I think that I think people are realizing that it's becoming to be a bigger part of their job. So even in an accounting sense of what I do, I've been exposed to softwares like Alteryx, which is a data analytics software. which is something that I, would have been pretty useful to have used at Sacred Heart. So, and I believe that some of the professors are using that, if I remember correctly. So I think building some of those skills that, everybody's going to know Excel, everybody's going to know PowerPoint.
Right.
I think kind of figuring out what workplace like softwares are relevant, right? And obviously it's not going to be, you're not going to come out an expert from Sacred Heart and let's say, a said software or program. But I think getting that, initial exposure, kind of understanding like how the software works, right? So like with Excel, that's keyboard shortcuts. With Alteryx, some of the different tools that you can use, like understanding the ins and outs of them. You don't need to be necessarily a formatting wizard, but just kind of understanding the basics of that. I think that some of those skills, kind of leaning towards the data analytics side, is would be prevalent, and something that if I could go back, I would definitely sharpen up on in my field, but also some other general finance fields as well.
Great. Great. You're full of really useful information. And one thing before I let you go here, Tim, is any just last words of advice, for any current student, anything to add in general, now that you've been kind of, that now that you've graduated, you're in the workforce, any kind of last words of wisdom?
Yeah. So I think something that's pretty big, and I think that I did a good job of it while I was at Sacred Heart, but you can always enhance upon it more, is you really, what you put in is what you get out, right? So that's not just like simply the classroom. That applies to, kind of the bigger picture, the overarching theme of college. Right now is the time to take risks. During my 4 years, I had an accounting internship and a finance internship at two different companies, like two different summers. And that's something that I'm really glad that I was able to do, because I was able to figure out that at least within that specific area of finance that I did the internship in, that I preferred the accounting side more. And that's something that I wouldn't have known by, listening to a professor or reading a book. That's something that you, I think, really need to experience yourself. So that's one piece of advice, right? Is like, try different things, right? If you're watching this video, you're 18 to 22, you have a whole entire life ahead of you. So, now's the time to, start trying different things. And then I guess like specifically within my field, right? It's pretty news driven. So I guess, kind of staying ahead on the trends within the finance industry, specifically, hedge fund industry, private equity industry. There's a ton of news that's always circulating. So I think reading up on that, kind of getting yourself educated, and, it should be fun. It shouldn't, if you see it as a chore, I don't want to break it to you, but it might not be for you, and that's totally okay. But this stuff like should, be interesting to you. You're gonna spend a good chunk of your life, working in it or towards it. So I think, just like staying up to date on things, trying different things, trying to think of what else. Also too, just like doing your own like research and due diligence outside of the classroom. That could be potentially, contacting an alumni, and something that Chris, Adrian, and I are working on through the Alumni Advisory Board. Just really making sure that when the 4 or 5 years comes to a close, you say, wow, like I really did something impactful and something that I want to do with my life. And I gave 110% effort, getting towards that stage. So yeah.
No regrets, right?
Yep, no regrets.
Great, great. Well, thank you again, Tim. It was great to see you. And again, we really value your time and your insight. This was incredibly helpful. We hope to see you back on campus again soon. But thank you again. And yeah, let me know, going forward, if you have any questions, or students, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email through the Career Development Center. All right.
Yes.
Thanks,
Yep.
Tim.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.